and we're going to be talking about angles today. We're talking about angles. All right. Now, angles are a concept dealing with geometry, and what we're going to talk about is some basic vocabulary dealing with angles today. So, the vocabulary words that we want to talk about are plane. We want to also talk about parallel. We want to talk about intersect. We want to talk about perpendicular. And we also want to talk about oblique. Okay? As well as these concepts are basically the basics of dealing with angles. So the first thing we look at is a plane is simply a flat surface. Okay, so when we talk about this flat surface now, this flat surface actually is like a tabletop. It could be a sheet of paper. Those are realistic examples of planes. We also want to talk about two lines being drawn in the same plane. So you have in order to make an angle, you have what's called a ray, and a ray looks like this. It has an endpoint and it has direction like that. So an angle is made when I have two rays that intersect. They have a common point. So intersect means that they cross one another. So if I have a ray there, and let's just say I have a ray here, these don't intersect. But if I take this ray right here, ray P, and then I have ray Q with a common endpoint together, then now we form an angle. Okay, parallel means they when two lines are parallel, or they do not intersect. Okay, and they also are going to stay the same distance from one another. That's the important part about parallel. Okay, so in the textbook it says when lines do not cross but they stay the same distance apart, they are parallel. So they do not intersect and also same distance apart. That's key. Okay, they stay the same distance apart. Okay, intersect, as the textbook says, intersecting things, they cross, okay, or they touch one another. And then perpendicular means that when two things are perpendicular, they intersect and form a 90-degree angle. Okay? Now, for this last word, if lines intersect at a point but are not perpendicular, then the lines are oblique. So they intersect but are not, let's take that back, perpendicular. Okay? So when two lines intersect but they're not perpendicular, they're called oblique. Okay, and as you can see on the bottom of page 142, they give you examples of parallel lines. Now notice this is a ray. A ray just has an endpoint, and then it's kind of like an arrow. But a line is going to have the arrow on both ends, because this is telling me that this line continues to the left and it continues to the right infinitely or forever. Okay, so this is a line. And as you notice, you have an example of parallel lines on the bottom of page 142. You have an example of perpendicular lines, and you have an example of oblique lines. Okay, now when lines intersect, angles are formed. So You can use lines that intersect to form angles, but also you can use rays that intersect to form angles. Okay? So